This is part 2 of a 3-part video set on repairing and restoring this 1836 Empire dresser. It includes why that all of the drawers were shellacked. It talks about why I painted the inside of the drawers, how to line drawers easily, why stain was needed on this, why I didn't just clear coat it. There is a specific reason for doing that with mahogany. How to apply the stain over the finish without getting lap lines, and how to apply stain within the ornate pieces. Also, how to hide the areas where wood putty has to be applied for repairs. I show you how to hide that so that it just blends in as though it's the regular grain of the wood. This is an excellent piece to show you how just clear coat can change what a wood looks like depending on what the color of the wood is when it gets wet. This is shellac, so yes, it has a little bit of amber in it, but you're going to see it go really dark brown, and it stays that dark brown after it's dried. It's because of the wood. These sides are mahogany. They're a cheaper cut of it, but it is going very dark brown. Okay, let's try this again. On the side you can actually see, because I'm trying to steer a boat here. This is a clear coat of shellac. Shellac has a little bit of amber in it, but look how dark that wood is going. And it is not going to go lighter when it dries. So it is a function of the wood itself. So when you are using a stain and you think, that stain's bad, it didn't cover the way it's supposed to, that's not the color I got. Well, actually it is the color stain you got, or the color finish, even if you're using clear coat, but it's not going to go and stay the same color as raw wood. You can put just a clear coat on raw wood, but if you truly want to see the grain, you always need to add a stain first, because it will even out the imperfections and give you a much prettier final finish. So I'm going to continue. Mahogany is one of the woods that definitely bleeds tannins, and it bleeds it significantly. By using shellac on the inside and the outside of all the components except the front of the drawer, I am sealing in all of those tannins, and it's also giving me the option then to paint the inside of the drawer in a lighter color, which I'm going to be doing. One of the other benefits of sealing drawers like this in an old piece with shellac is that it is the only thing that is going to fully seal tannins, but it also is the only thing that will seal in odors that you find in old pieces. It will seal in the smell from cigarette smoke. So it's an ideal product to do that. Nothing else works. Kills doesn't. Polyurethane doesn't. Shellac is the only product that will do it correctly and leave you with a permanent solution. We have spent the better part of 4 days sanding, reinforcing drawers, re-gluing, clamping, getting things aligned properly in this dresser. And there's still more to be done. Right now the top is clamped, and we're working on getting the warp out of it so that it can have its final sand. And so while that's happening, I'm going to paint the inside of these drawers. These were all thoroughly cleaned. I used Dawn and warm water and then Windex because I knew what I was going to do to it. It did not need to be deglossed as dry as this wood was. So the entire inside of this, the outside of these drawers, and the back have all had a brushed on coat of clear shellac. If I had been using the spray shellac, I would have wound up having it up onto the veneer here, which needs to be stained. So brushing was the best choice, and brushing also allowed me to do one coat. Spraying on something like a dresser like this, you would need to spray 3 times to get close to what one coat will be, and it's soaked in, just the wood just drank it in on the sides and front. The bottom had been shellacked at some point, but I wanted a fresh coat on there to get it clean. And so the back of these drawers and all at this point are finished. But I don't like in a dark wood when the inside of the drawers you cannot see well. There's no reflected light because of the darkness. So what I have done is I mixed Simply Sage, a portion that I had left over from another project, and Almond. It's about, I measured in my cup, but it's about a cup and a half of Simply Sage and 3/4 of a cup of Almond. I needed a much lighter color than the sage for what I wanted in here for the light green. It's almost to the shade of HTP's Willow. So this is HTP's Simply Sage and Almond mixed together, and I did that because I needed a really soft green. It's hard to tell on camera, but this cream background has some green in it. So this very soft green here is going to match with this really beautifully, but also give some color, reflected color on the sides. You can see I taped it, and you're probably going, well, what the heck? Why bother doing that when you're gonna put paper on the bottom? Well, I guess I had it drilled into me by my father that 5 more minutes of your time and attention to detail gives you a much more professional finish, a cleaner look, and looks like you were behaving like a professional would redoing something. So I know I'm going to use brush and roll on here. I don't want paint on the bottom of this. When I pull the tape off, I'm going to have a clean line. If somebody else in the future doesn't want to have paper in the bottom of this, they don't have a sloppy paint job smeared all over the bottom of this. You also run the risk of the sloppy paint job making your paper not lay smooth if you didn't roll it out. So I went to the trouble of sealing this to have a clean finish on it for future years. Putting this tape on did not take that long, but it's going to give me really clean edges as I finish here. And you think about the order in which you're doing things. I'm painting right now, it's convenient, but I'm also coming up here because this has to have one last sand with 320 grit sandpaper on it. So if I accidentally get a little bit up on here, it's going to sand right off with the paint being so freshly done. I'm not going to show you on camera doing the brush and roll on this. It's an awkward angle. It's hard to see really smoothly what's happening, and I need to be moving without thinking about a camera so that I don't get paint on the bottom up here, and I don't get paint up here or on the top of these edges because I don't want them painted. So off camera, the inside of all these drawers is going to get painted with this custom color I've created using brush and roll. I had forgotten that I did want you to see how well a light color goes over this deep dark brown. It's probably going to take 2 coats. I would expect that. But and this is a trick for getting up on an edge without going onto the edge, pulling your brush straight up, just not coming all the way over it. And I'm not dipping my brush way down in this. I'm only going to do this section for the camera because I just want you to see what a really nice coat this is going to create. You don't see streakiness, you don't see thin areas where you can see the brown coming through. It's an even coat of paint. This is what a first coat of paint with Heirloom Traditions paint should look like when it dries. If you're here in person, you can see that it definitely needs a second coat, but 2 coats is going to cover it. And these sides were almost as dark as this bottom. So it's not the darkness underneath. The darkness underneath doesn't affect the final color at all, which confuses people. It doesn't matter what you're painting over. If you're painting a solid coat of paint, the final coat of paint is going to be true to its color. There are a few places here where it's dried a little bit thinner that right now, yes, the color does not look in person its total true color because there's still some of the other color showing through. But once the second coat is on here, I could paint this paint on a white background, put it against this, and it'll be exactly the same color. So the second coat is going to go on, and then these will be ready to move on. And it's exactly the same process. Applying a liberal amount of paint, but you can see I dip often and I do not go far back on my brush. I have really good light here, so I can see that I am fully coating over this. There are a little bit of bubbles forming. I had already been painting on other drawers because between coats, I washed my brush out and I washed my roller. Everything's rolled out of that, and you should be able to see right here a difference between where I put the second coat and where I have this coat. These are just going to be continued to be painted off screen. The drawers have been finished except for the front that still needs to be stained and finished. The inside has 2 coats of the green that I mixed with Simply Sage and Almond by HTP and using brush and roll to put this in here. The outside of these drawers, which I had shellacked, were slightly rough, which made sense. It had not been finished in before. So that got sanded and a second coat of shellac on it. It's now really smooth. You never want to paint or finish one side of an open board like this. You want both sides to be finished or this board is going to warp. And you don't want that to happen on any of these. So the paper that I have for this drawer is just a hair narrow for the whole drawer. But I'm going to use it this way. I'm just going to be careful with how I position it. Make sure to double check that your pattern is, when you open the drawer, the pattern is right side up for you to look at it. Some patterns, it doesn't matter, but like this one has a floral with flowers, the growth of the leaves, the birds. The front of the drawer, it needs to face it, and it's really easy to forget and put one in upside down, and it's not fun to get them out. So I want to show you a trick for helping you put peel and stick in, whether it's on the wall or it's in a drawer. I know you're going to see videos that show people just ripping the whole back of it off, holding it up and lopping it down and in it goes. Or they push it all down in and then they have to do all kinds of trimming. I did my trimming before it went in here. I carefully measured, always measure twice, cut once. And I don't ever, and I've put this stuff on for forever, but I don't ever take the entire thing off. I have more control if you do what I'm going to show you, and it's the same thing I do with transfers. I fold a piece of the paper back, but not the whole thing. This allows me to place this in the drawer, get it lined up well, and in this case, I need to fudge it just a little bit so that it's even on both sides, the amount that's showing. And then when I bring it down, because it's flush up here to the front, I'm bringing it down first into the center, and then I'm running my hand over both sides. That's actually angled a little bit. So, because I don't have the whole thing stuck in, I can repair this without having all of my sticky undone multiple times. And I would much rather have to do just a small piece of this than the entire thing. And even with just one piece of this, it's tricky. See if that goes down better. Got a bubble in the middle. I'm going to pull it over and push my hand down it. Now, what I can do is I can reach underneath, get on the side of it, so that I can run my hand up and down this. And I don't have to use a credit card or a scraper to try to get the air bubbles out. The air bubbles are going out as I'm unpeeling it, and actually just pressing against it and holding this up loosely is helping this come into place. So here I'm going to be looking at matching this up. Yep, this is the one that goes here. And again though, I'm only going to do part of this down because the strips like this are hard to hold in place. You want to make sure it's going straight because skinny pieces are really easy to get completely out of alignment. This is going to lap just a little bit on this piece because I don't want to fight the edge there. And normally doing this, when it's the pieces that are in the big drawers that were in the middle, those were butted right up against the edge of this. But the design on this is close enough that it can handle it without showing obviously. Then I have one little piece to put in up here. And I'll lift back that piece. It's going this way. Yep, it needs to be under it. Come up. Well, it's the back of the door. We're just going to leave it there. Let's go in that direction. There we go. Time and patience and thinking things through a little better than I did this time. We'll get them done for you. This entire piece now has been through, and we'll put pictures up on one side or the other here for you to see some of the steps that we're not running video on, of all the clamping, the repair work, the different things that had to be done with this. It was first sanded with either 60 or 80 grit sandpaper with oscillating sanders. It depended on where it was for whether it needed the rougher grit of the 60 to break through some of the finish that somebody had put on it. Then it was gone through with 220, which the Mahogany didn't need a 120 in between, the 220 did it. And then finally, the entire thing was completely sanded with 320 grit sandpaper. And right now, this is super, super smooth. It feels like it has finish on it. It's so smooth. The feet have all been put back on this. We added brass and wood wheels to it because that is something in my research that we found this was actually part of what was often put on these pieces. It's very heavy to move, so wheels would have been a big help. The next step that needs to be done with this is it needs to be stained. You could see in the beginning that there is one band across the front of it that is a lighter wood. That is solid mahogany, but it is to get the depth that we needed, the thickness. That was the darkest color that was available in the woodworking shops where we are. And it wasn't available for me to order online, and I wouldn't have because you can't tell for sure what the color is. So this I know I can deal with staining. I'm going to stain it and probably have to stain it a second time depending on how it takes it so that it blends in with everything else. There's a few spots on the top here that had some fill. There's a spot here, some spots here that had, it looks like bleach or some type of chemical was spilled on it at some point, probably when it was in its garage inhabitants. And that's going to require some handwork to blend it in. There's some veneer work that was done by somebody before us, that the grain lines were not lined up exactly the way they should have been, but it was going to cause more damage to try to take it off than to leave it there and for me to try to blend it in by hand using different colors. I am not using a gel stain on this. This is wood that's over 200 years old of drying. It would have been dried before they ever made a piece of furniture out of it. And we actually found a date on it of 1836. So it's been drying for a very, very long time. Wood, just like human skin, needs moisture. If it's put into it and moisturized deeply and then sealed, it keeps that wood wet enough, moisturized enough that it stays in good condition, it doesn't warp, and it doesn't shift and break apart in its seams. To do a stain that will penetrate into this, I need a penetrating stain, and that's exactly what I'm going to use. I'm going to use Mahogany by Minwax because it is specially created with some amber, some brown, and the mahogany reddish tone to it to bring out the grain of mahogany and let it do its shimmer 3D effect that it does when you see it in person. And that's going to be put on the whole thing. If I used a topical, like the topical gel stain, it would just sit on top. It would scuff off over time eventually, and it would not nourish this wood. And the other thing with gel stains is if you really want to see the grain of wood, you want to use a penetrating stain. A gel stain always slightly clouds the grain. They're good for many purposes. If you've been here for a while, you've seen me use them quite a bit, But for this piece, to bring it back to what it should look like from its time period, which is my goal, I need to use a penetrating stain. And even if that wasn't my goal and I just wanted to stain it, it needs the deep moisturization. So the drawers are all going to be taken out of it, and the case is going to be stained, and then all of the drawers. And once they're all stained, they're going to need to dry for 72 hours before I do the next step on them. We sanded everything outside the shop and in the main part of the garage because dust in the air is your enemy when you are doing stain and when you are putting finishes on. I'm using red mahogany by Minwax, their penetrating stain, the traditional stain. I have poured some out into a container here, and I have two tools I'm going to use. I have part of an old t-shirt that I can get into tight spaces in without overly adding too much stain. And I also have half of a stain pad, which is foam in the middle, with terry cloth on the outside of it. That's what I'm going to do most of the work with. And then I have good paper towels torn apart that I'm going to wipe it back with. Some people are going to say, oh, but you need to use a cloth. Well, if you've sanded it well and you've prepped it well, a good paper towel will wipe it down really well and not leave any fuzz on it. If you use cheap paper towels, you're going to get a lot of fuzz. So we're ready to start this, and I will not try to reach standing here from here to over here. You're going to see me move from one end and keep moving down so that I don't get curved motions with my stain. I want straight lines with my stain, even though I'm going to be putting it on a pretty good area of this, because the penetrating stain doesn't lap like, good, it didn't go all the way. Like, gel stains will, if you're not really careful with them. And it's kind of scary when you're first putting it on because it looks like you're just turning it to black, but you're not. It will even out. And I'm trying to avoid getting it onto front until I'm ready to get around there and do that. This is so dry that it's just really pulling it in. And you saw inside the drawers that this wood was going to go dark no matter what. This out of my way. And you should be able to see that I am not trying to put this on thin. I want it wet. I want it to really soak into the wood. Another paper towel. Do one more wipe down of the thing. That spot, oh, I pushed it right into it and staying on the cloth. Mahogany is not a wood you want to bleach. You want to use stain on it, and you can see stain still came off here. And it's brought out the different runs of dark and light in this. Let's see if I can get the side here. Pouncing it because it just gets it onto this really well. My hands, my gloves are double because the solvent in stain, it's not going to hurt your skin, but it will eat through the gloves. And then you've got it all in your cuticles and under your nails. And if you have a professional manicure, it's going to damage that manicure. When I get to the detail pieces where there's carving on this, those I will use a small art brush to get into the crevices. We added new veneer banding all around the top because a lot of it was damaged. Still need to wipe this side. Even though I want a lot of stain to get into this, I still want to wipe it down. I don't want solid color on this. I want to see the grain, and the next step that I do to it will start to bring the grain out. And the little areas of wood repair here, I will do handwork on those. I think the top is usually the hardest thing for you all to see what you need to do with. So I wanted to show you the top, and I'm going to continue doing the whole case of this, and then I'll definitely show you the drawer fronts when I hit those so that you can see how that the flame veneer comes out when those are done. And the other thing is with stain, the reason you don't want to bleach mahogany is it will become really, really blotchy, and there's no way to fix that with stain. But if you use the stain on it, it evens out all the tones of the mahogany. So there's pieces on the side that are lighter, the areas in the front here, there's lights and darks here, but it's all going to be one tone because the stain will do that for mahogany. It's really hard to get into these spaces. Well, I need to get that out of there a little bit. This is also why I thought I had that all brushed out, but obviously I didn't. You don't want to dip straight into your can of stain. Pour some out. I keep containers like this so that I don't have to worry about it. I'm not soaking my brush, but this will let me get into all these grooves. That the sponge will not let me do. Got just a little bit more. Get in here. Look to make sure that everything, all the indentations, all the little chip marks have gotten stain applied. And then on things that have like this, I immediately start wiping them back, because I really want the top surface to reflect more light. You need to get inside because these areas will show depending on the light source. And you don't want raw wood, you want finish to be in here. Get off that front again where it comes out. That's also why this board here will get stained. It's easy to stain the whole thing because sometimes the drawers shift a little bit and you see the top of this board or the underneath of this board depending on where you're standing. These Greek Acanthus leaves and detailing here and column top. Get the same treatment. And over here on the side, there's more of it. So I need to get in there. Brush also helps you get behind when there's really tight spaces and it's things like this, because it's a really narrow space in here. Oh, you saw that down the bottom. Now, we'll switch back to the sponge to get the column here. The sponge is really helpful in tight places because you can get in there to get to where it was sanded, but it's not got the stain on there yet. And it really gets the back as well. There's a little bit of a spot back here that I can't get with the sponge because there is a dowel that's holding this piece steady. So here, the bristles of the brush, and we'll get there in a minute, allow that to get done. Okay.
You got a spot right there, top right, and then down on your round belly, can't see it because your angle.
Yep.
All the way
Right
around.
there. Yep. Thank you.
Still missed it. It's inside. You gotta look way down.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
That's why I haven't even attempted to do the feet until I get down on the floor. I prefer to do all the edges first. So if there's any extra that gets in there, it doesn't matter because it's not where it's going to be seen. This is definitely bringing the grain out here. Just like white when you have something that's dark. Hard to see final grain. I'm going to buff off that brass. The locks are not back in the drawers yet. Every drawer has its lock, so maybe one day we'll actually find keys for it. But Okay, we'll trade out the jump. And if you notice, I'm not running a line up on the front of the door yet. If a little gets up there, that's okay, but I don't want a big line that starts to dry. Got more stain on this than I intended, so I went ahead and put some on the top first rather than finishing this line. And I'm using really firm pressure, rubbing this back. It's not a light rub back, a lot of pressure. I really want to dry off everything that's on the top so I don't have any lines of stain. And again, making sure I've got all that stain back off the metal, because right now it will come off easy. There we go. All right, Jim. And laying the paper towels on top of that is not going to harm it. Let's see, what do we got here? And around to the front. And this dries lighter than what you're seeing. I'm going to show it all to you. So when we get the next step, you'll be able to see that. The flame veneer that's on this, that Mahogany was well known for on the Empire pieces, is cut from where limbs join the trunk of the tree. And a piece is split so that it's an exact mirror image of the other side, and that it mimics the look of flames. Here, it's really bringing out that design. It's probably looking very dark for most of you. And the stain also helps to hide the seam line in the veneer where the two pieces of veneer were attached. That's going to have to go out to the table because it can't lie on the side. I have two fine tip Sharpie permanent markers. They're the ultra fine tip. It must be this teeny tiny tip. You can't do it with the thicker Sharpies. I don't care how sharp the tip is. You need it to be this ultra fine tip. What I'm working on this, and I've already done it on the drawers, is there are a few places here where that I filled, and it's staining a little lighter than the wood, and obviously there's no grain in it. These are teeny tiny black marks in this where it's darker. So I'm not going to be trying to make straight cross, line across this. I'm going to do a little tiny bit that will be even little dots in here are enough to help it. I'm going to do the same thing in this spot. And I'm barely letting the tip of that touch. And now I'm going to come back with the brown. And I'm looking at the grain lines that are here. So I'm not going against it. There's a little bit here in the fill here. Then I'm going to let that dry. And then I'm going to let this dry for probably about a half an hour because it'll soak really into the wood fill that is there. And the stain won't fight it. And I will use the tiniest bit of stain to fill in a second coat over this. I have a spot on the top on this other side that I will show you as well. And there's a section here that you can't see, I don't think very well, that I've already repaired, but I have not put stain on. So I'm going to move the camera to the other side and show you what I'm going to do on that top piece. It's the same principle, but you really have to look at the grain around it. This one is trickier because this back part is actually a knot that stained darker and there's no way to lighten it. And I don't want this whole thing to go dark. But I do need a little bit of black in here, and you can see that they come, it's kind of coming this way across the grain. So I don't want very much black in here. And then I want some brown coming in as well, but the brown will be longer pieces. And feathering back a little bit into the other and across. Into here. Now when I put the tiniest bit of stain on this after it dries and immediately wipe it up so I don't get a circle of darker in here, this will camouflage that piece so that if somebody's just looking across the top of this, they're not going to see that there was a repair there. They're going to have to look for it. The Q-tip was only just a little ways dipped into the stain, but of course it absorbed it straight up. So then what I have done is tamp it off so that there's not a bunch going into here. And I'm blotting it onto these areas that I did grain fill in. And I want to get back out of it. I've already fixed that on another spot on a couple of other places. So I need a little bit more stain than I had, but I want to keep getting it off, just like pouncing off when I'm dry brushing. And there was a little bit there that was done. And you keep working it until you've got those areas covered. Here, I can still see the lines that I put in there. There's a spot here on the corner that didn't get stained, so I've got that filled in. And now when this gets the finish put on top of it, these will pretty much hide, and I will show you on the other piece, the top piece, how it helps as well. This piece does not need nearly as much. And you can see I'm immediately wiping. I don't want a lot to soak in. I'm barely touching, so I'm not wiping it all out. That spot right there, I think, is still part of the knot, so it's being hard-headed about taking any stain. So I have to be extra light on it. Okay, that will dry, and it too will hide. Be sure to check out video 3, which will show you the final project and how we achieved it. It also talks about why I applied de-waxed shellac, not regular shellac, de-waxed, and why the polyurethane was chosen as a finish as opposed to just all shellac layers. It includes why you sand between top coats of top coats and what grit you need to use, using the antiquing gels to highlight the pieces, and how the knobs were restored as well.